Hey everyone, Xander here from Excess Gaming Podcast, and I thought I'd make a video talking about some of the things I miss of gaming in the 90s. Now, I picked the 90s because that's when I was growing up. I was born in 85, and I started getting a little older and started getting into video games. It was around, the early 90s, and I felt like that was a very unique time for video games. The popularity was just starting to get big, and some of the different advertisement ideas and stuff like that would pioneer what gaming is today was just starting to come out, and it was very, very interesting. Now, one of the first things I wanted to talk about that I really miss about video games of the 90s is going in the retail stores and seeing video game kiosks. I know you guys remember this. There was a time when you would go into a video game retail store, or any retail store for that matter that sold video games, when they weren't so, into pre-orders and subscriptions and, the whole bells and whistles, they wanted to kind of show you what a video game was all about. So they would have these little kiosks that would have some of the biggest titles that were coming out at that time. Now, with that being said, some of these kiosks, they weren't the most sanitary places to be. I remember going to some kiosks and picking up those old sticky controllers that looked like they've just been through some video game boot camp. The ones I remember the most, that had the most brutal, was the N64 controllers with their limp joypad. I remember the joystick would just, it just wouldn't have any more life in it. It had just been played so freaking hard, no pun intended. But that's definitely something I miss, and you don't really have those kiosks anymore. And another thing I really miss about gaming in the 90s was renting video games. Now, I know you can still do it with Redbox and Gamefly. It's not completely dead. But just the feeling of going into an actual video store and going through all those shelves and seeing, rows and rows of video games to choose from, that would help determine how great your weekend was going to be. There was, for a little kid at the time, it was like a life or death situation. You didn't want to get some game that was just going to completely blow and just have a terrible weekend because that's all you were stuck to play with. The only thing you really had going for you was the back cover and maybe some story your friend told you at school or something like that. Because if you didn't read the magazine, chances are you probably didn't know about it. I remember, in my town, we used to have so many arcades. You'd go to any sort of convenience store, grocery store, anywhere like that, they had an arcade machine. They had, huge arcades that you could go to, and now it's kind of a relic of the past, and I really miss that atmosphere that the arcades had, that competitive aura that people would have playing these games. I remember watching people playing, Street Fighter 2 or Mortal Kombat, or, playing some sort of light gun game like Virtual Cops, something like that, or even some of the racing games were a lot of fun. But you don't really have that anymore. Now you just have Xbox Live and PS3, the PS Network, and it has that spirit, but it's just not the same. There was something about the arcades, and I don't know about you guys, but if you were young like me, I'm pretty sure you guys remember just going to those arcade machines and just pounding on buttons with no quarters in there, just because you wanted to feel like you were part of that awesome video game. Also in the 90s, what was really big at the time was, of course, the franchise cartoony characters like Mario and Sonic that, really revolutionized the gaming market, and a lot of other gaming companies were like, hey, we need a cartoon mascot too. And so you just had so many of those, and I really miss it, because there were some really, really good games that came out back then. Some of them are kind of forgettable, but some of them were a lot of fun. And a lot of people today, when they see these cartoony characters and these platform games, they're like, oh, well, those are just kiddie games. Those were actually the hardcore games back in the day. Come on. All the Disney Capcom games didn't really hold your hand back then. They were pretty hard. And there were certain game systems that you'd have that kind of established you in a certain society of video games back then. And I'm talking about, of course, the console wars. The Super Nintendo and Sega Genesis were duking it out, and they were just slamming each other in advertisements, and you just don't have that anymore. Of course, the Xbox 360 and PS3, they have their fanboys, but honestly, there's not that much difference between the systems that really have it matter. You know, it doesn't matter now. But back then, you know, you had exclusive titles, you had different sound chips, you had different graphics, you had different controllers. It was just totally different than what it is today. And you know, I grew up as a Super Nintendo guy because that's what I had, but I have to say over the years, my love for Sega has just, like a fine wine, that's gotten just better with age. And here's where I want you guys to come in. Leave a comment, video response, tell me some things of your gaming past that you miss the most that's not around anymore. You know, rather it be renting video games, going to arcade, renting systems. You guys remember you could actually rent video game systems. They came in their own like little big black suitcase. It was so, felt so indiscreet with your Virtual Boy. I know some of you guys rented those. But anyway, you know, just tell me what you guys think, tell me what you guys miss the most, and I always tell people, don't determine your age by video games or you'll feel fucking old. Like when I was talking about an early video, I was talking about I played Dragon Warrior 22 years ago. Thinking back about that, that's a long time. But you know what? The memories will last forever and I absolutely love it. But anyway guys, thanks for the likes, thanks for subscribes, and as always, happy gaming.